You guys remember we talked about Reba Burr weaponizing her Twitter followers to get a raise on Miraculous Ladybug?
Oh, okay, that person.
Remember? So she had this to say: "Thanks, guys. I'm back. I'm happy to be back on Ascendance of a Bookworm for season 3. As you know, I wasn't willing to accept the same old rock bottom rate I had received in the past. Crunchyroll rose to the challenge and raised the rate for the show." So this person said that must have been in the LA branch. Yeah, I'm in LA. Well, where do we go from here?
Uh-huh.
Anime News Network confirmed with multiple industry sources familiar with Crunchyroll's dubbing procedure that the company is focusing on casting Texas-based talent in its dubs. This season's dub cast
No.
lists half as many actors outside the Lone Star State.
No. Oh, you're
Dude.
telling me they want to focus on a state that doesn't have union rules and stuff? Oh,
Right?
no.
What do you know?
I just like seeing how you put it back to back so it looks like she is the reason they're like, you know what, let's
Well,
not do
I've
Ellie.
got more to go over than just that, but let's read the article real quick. So, Crunchyroll's move back to in-person dub recording sparks union discussion. So, Evan Minto here says, in March, I wrote about a growing group of anime voice actors demanding more union productions in the anime dubbing industry. Since that article was published, the conversation has only intensified, and on Wednesday, April 13th, the PGM, People of Global Majority, cringe at your name, VO list, and the Coalition of Dubbing Actors, CODA. Like, why would you even use this as your name? People of Global Majority. You know what that means? Like, who are the people of global minority?
People who are underage? I don't know.
No, people of global minority are white people. So the idea, this term,
didn't know that.
people of global majority,
Are
is
they?
saying yes.
Aren't Asians the minority or the majority?
No,
Yeah, so
that,
I'm saying the
that it
people
ain't
of global minority. I'm saying the opposite.
Oh.
People of global minority are white, right? So like people, they always talk about the minorities in the United States and the Western world, but globally, Caucasians are the minority.
Yeah,
in
now
terms
that
of
you say
population.
it, that makes sense. I just didn't realize that was what it was
So
called.
they've called their organization the People of Global Majority in a very weird flex to say they're like, we are the majority. There's more of us than you. In fact, like it's just such a weird thing to decide the title. Like, what is the agenda of titling your group that? Right? Like, colored people of the world unite is effectively what they're saying. And it's like, that is a weirdly charged thing to put as the name of your union group, right? Anyway, so on Wednesday, April 13th, the People of Global Majority VO list and the Coalition of Dubbing Actors, CODA, responded with a virtual roundtable to answer questions about unionization hosted by actor Risa May, who is Inui in My Dress Up Darling. The conversation occurred in the shadow of a new development at Crunchyroll. The company is moving back to in-person recording 2 years after Crunchyroll and Funimation switched over to remote recording in response to COVID-19. The roundtable began with an introduction to union dubs from anime and video game actor Marin Miller, who plays Izanami in Be the Beginning, who later gave the floor to representatives from the union covering actors in the U.S. The Screen Actors Guild Association of Film, Television, and Radio Actors, which is SAG-AFTRA. One thing Miller clarified, CODA isn't part of SAG. It's an independent group that advocates for dub actors, pushing for more union shows and better union contracts. The 2-hour discussion and audience Q&A highlighted the benefits of SAG offers to its members: minimum pay, health insurance, a pension, while also exposing lingering questions from non-union actors about both the impact greater union density will have on the industry and the path to achieving it. So this effectively, like, I've noticed a certain type of the political spectrum has this belief that companies have an endless supply of money with which to pay employees. Like, for instance, there's all this shit going on about different groups. Like, for example, I've seen people on like the Ron Toye timelines retweeting takes about, for example, the rising gas prices and how Republicans voted against capping gas prices at the pump, right? And of course, the reason that Republicans would be against that is because what's effectively happening if you do that is you literally just make the inflation worse by having the government foot the bill to the gas companies for the gas that they're selling at a discounted rate instead of just letting them pump the gas, right? The first thing Biden did when he got elected was shut down the oh god, what's the name of the pipeline now?
Oh shit! I knew it.
Keystone Access
Keystone, yeah, the
Pipeline?
Keystone pipeline, and shut down the drilling permits
Fucking like Jeopardy.
for Alaska and all these different places. So the U.S. is no longer energy independent, right? So the and this is happening all over the world, that countries are intentionally allowing like the life of their citizenry to get worse, right? To squeeze when simple things could be done to stop supply chain issues and different various things, but instead we're intentionally putting the pressure on. So anyway, what I'm getting back to here is that the belief system is, well, a union is better because minimum pay, pension, health insurance. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, that costs so much more that what's going to happen is there's going to be way less work to go around. They're going to start releasing more shows as sub only because it's cheaper, you know? And it's a short-sighted, like it's a, what do you call it? It's an ideal to strive for, better pay. But at the end of the day, like you might end up actually making less money in the long run, unless you're one of the hot sought after talents that gets all the work, you know?
Well, you've also got to understand is, I'll keep all my personal opinions aside of this. Most people don't want to look at it that to fix one thing. Okay, I've lost my complete train of thought where I was trying to go with this. But when it comes to the whole situation of they're like, okay, this side did this side did that. Well, there's always, got to be a choice made. And a lot of people don't ever look at it, the fact that regardless of how we go about the whole fixing gas prices, raising rates for jobs and everything, it's true. Companies don't have all the money. They don't have, everything just to throw out there. If they had infinite money, then, why would they be hiring people?
Yeah, especially right now, right? Like especially right now where we're entering Great Depression levels of inflation.
Yep.
And companies are going to have far, far, far less money to spend on projects. And the dividends or whatever, the profit margins are going to need to be much higher for every risk that they take. They're going to need much more of a guarantee, that they're going to come out on top of the other side. So it's a bad move all around. I mean, look, ideally in an ideal world, you would have, health insurance and all of these things, but it's not going to, in the long run, it's not going to actually work to your advantage. And in the long run, it's going to have much more negative effects, especially, like I said, as we go into the realm we're going into. Now, I would argue that Funimation should not go back to in-person recording in a lot of ways, because I think that Funimation could save money by hiring cheaper actors out of state who were able to record from home. Yeah. I definitely think that's.
I don't understand. I don't understand why they don't do that. Contractors would be easier to do, and they would also be cheaper because
they can write off the studio
about...
if they have them come into the office.
Yeah, but then they also have the overhead of.
So I can tell you why they're not eager to keep going with the at-home recordings using an excerpt from this article. According to Aaron Dismuke, interesting
that keeps popping up on our podcast,
right?
Apparently.
The dubbing kits just weren't as smooth as in-person recording. It's an iPad and a USB microphone that goes into the iPad. It comes with a mic stand, but it doesn't come with soundproofing. They had to sort that out themselves with engineer consultation and mattress foam and getting in your closet. And sometimes they're holding the iPad. The actors were telling me some very rough stories about trying to record from home. Gosh, it was tricky. And there were multiple times with people who couldn't come in where we had to get pickups because there was some rustling around. There was some rustling sound that I couldn't hear because you don't hear playback whenever it's on the iPad. That's the thing that's really crazy about those iPads is why I'm glad to be done with them. Is because it's so hard to direct someone when you can't hear back what they did. You can only hear it one time and you're going off of memory. You're like, I think that was good. Will you listen to it and let me know if it was good? And then they don't hear the rustle of their clothes in the closet. So effectively what he's trying to say is that the way that they handled this, I think Trent brought this up when we were doing the In Touch coverage at one point, where he was talking about a studio. He said he thinks it was Funimation, but he couldn't remember. And I'm confirming that it was, where they moved to doing in-home recording during COVID and sent out kits for the people to do the recordings, right? So what it actually ended up being was just an iPad with a USB microphone, as Aaron Dismuke was saying. And the reason for the iPad was so that you could interface sort of like through Skype with the audio engineer, and you could see the blips and the video screen of the whatever you're dubbing, right? But the problem is that there was terrible latency issues at times where people couldn't actually see it in real time, right? So you would basically just guess at how long you're supposed to be talking because the blips would end before the mouth started opening, and you just have to deliver your line and hope that it was good. And so for depending on a person's internet connection and all that, it was really hit or miss, you know? And then they also said the sad reality is that not every actor had the money, space, and know-how or time to create a proper home setup when this all kicked off. Back when the pandemic started, one thing Jonah Scott mentioned to me, this is literally the script of this video, starring Abi from Cartoon Cypher. So when they say mention to me, it's Abi from Cartoon Cypher. So back when the pandemic started, one thing Jonah Scott mentioned to me is that even some big name pro voice actors were normally able to head over to their agent's recording studio when they needed it. But now being able to remote record almost acts as an additional prerequisite to getting cast, particularly in the case of role reprisals. By the way, this is
comment on that.
This is August 29, 2021. So this is in reference to during the pandemic, not the current stuff we're talking about. Go ahead, Lance. You wanted to make a comment?
Okay. The thing is like there's been this argument for the longest time about, fairness and openness of people becoming VAs. This opens the door at home recording. And I've set up a lot of home studios with people and done all that kinds of stuff for years. Heck, Footnum knows how to do it as well. It's not rocket science. There's literal cheap ways you can do this on like just a few bucks. And this whole argument that they didn't have the whole, perfect setup or any of that kinds of stuff. One, that's kind of bullshit, because if you're trying to have if you're trying to be an actor or something, going about learning how to understand your tools and understand the product that you need to do the job is proving far more your understanding and worth of what you're not only capable of doing, but what you're capable of accomplishing. So I have a serious issue with that. And also, I've been watching a lot of the dubs, just that they've been putting out, especially over the pandemic. The voice quality was never a problem. I don't remember really having too much of a complaint there. I remember thinking people's voices were slightly different. Some of the big names that I've heard throughout the years, they seemed a little different, but a little bit of a mic can do that. But that's not a big complaint. It's just a slight tonal change that I pick up on.
Counterpoint.
Okay.
You guys remember that
oh God,
Amber Lee Connor, Sarah Wiedenhaft, Howard Wang, and Damon Mills are roommates?
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
He wasn't here. He wasn't here for those.
So let's just take this particular situation out of just pick a random person. Let's say that you're a voice actor and you have roommates who are not also voice actors, right? Because obviously in this situation, this wouldn't be an issue because they would understand the importance of, hey, I'm doing a recording session, keep it down, right? But no matter what, if you, for the couple bucks, as you were saying, to soundproof your room in the recording, to give yourself the optimum recording thing by putting up foam or whatever, which is relatively cheap, to be able to set up a room where you can record. But now let's say you've got 3 roommates, right? And the only room you can record in is your bedroom, because that's the only free room that you have in the situation where you've got the roommates, right? And then right next door is one of your roommates' room, and while they're in that room and you're trying to record, they start blasting Motley Crue or something, right? And it's seeping through the walls and getting into your recording, so I can see there will be situations where obviously a professional voice actor who's been doing it already for 20 years and has their own home and a recording studio in their home, or just the ability to transform one of their guest bedrooms into a recording studio during the pandemic, that's one thing. But not every voice actor that they hire is going to be able to do that in that regard.
Also, I agree with the person in the video here, or article, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you're raising the bar as to who you can hire, because now, he said, you have to be familiar with all this equipment. And yes, okay, Lance, if you're going to be a voice actor, you might want to become familiar with that equipment. But to be a voice actor, you don't need to know anything about a microphone.
Okay.
Right.
In order to be
that's a good point, because
what about the argument that I placed as if their whole equality thing and letting people join and all that? Well, I mean, by making it in studio only, they're discriminating and raising out people more.
Yeah, so I would argue that they should make it both. If you can prove that you have the capability and knowledge and the a good enough home setup, then
let's say it's a skill set. It's a skill set that'll get you a leg up in the competition for sure.
Yeah,
but
I think that's how they should approach it. I agree with that.
The other issue that you have to consider about that is, if you do say, okay, well, we don't want background. The other thing that you didn't mention is, you're saying, oh, well, what if you have roommates or whatever? What if you're living by yourself and you have a home studio set up in your front room or whatever, and there's construction, or someone's mowing their lawn, and it's like, oh, I sorry guys, I know we scheduled time, but my neighbor decided to mow his lawn right now. So there's multiple reasons why home setup wouldn't work. There are a few that it could work, and I agree in theory that leaving the option open is good. However, I just thought of a counterpoint to that, and that is, if you then say, okay, we're going to let X employees or contractors work from home because they have whatever setup, now you're kind of discriminated against all the people that do come in because they don't have good enough setups, and it's like, oh, this guy's getting special treatment because he's rich or something, right?
Even though they'd probably be getting paid the same.
Would they be getting paid though if they're using contractors rather than union workers?
Well, and that's the other thing, is that if you are, let's say, in LA, for example, where the cost of living is extremely high, and you're hiring some, no name who at least has the talent and the voice to be able to deliver a performance, who lives in Kentucky and records from home, you could pay them significantly less and them be more than willing to take, $3,000 for the thing. For them could be like
$20 for the person,
$8,000 for the person in LA. You know what I mean?
Not to mention, you got to understand that. Okay, I get y'all's counterpoints to all that, and taking all that into consideration, the fact that, okay, one, not everyone's going to have the ability. Two, there's just kind of merits to both sides. What about this thought process for as far as cost effectiveness goes? Little thing people always forget about when they come to a fucking studio is you need a sound engineer. You can't just go in there and say, hey, motherfucker, I'm going to record in your studio. No, 9 times out of 10, you have to hire somebody to record them.
Right, and I think that was a
portion. I mean, even when you're acting remotely, you still need the sound engineer on the other end.
But this is going back to something. That problem. This is something Random 11 was sort of addressing, was the idea that a voice actor doesn't necessarily know how the settings of a microphone and whatnot. True. Right. The idea is that in the actual work environment that they're used to, the sound engineer has set everything up, right? So you come in and the microphone is already calibrated, it's already set up and everything, and you just wait for your cue and you start performing, right? And then they record it and they handle the mixing and everything, and you just get to go home. So in the scenario of recording from home, like you need to start becoming a little bit more savvy, which is something that people should all easily be able to do. Like there's no reason, unless you've got an extremely below 90 IQ, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to
A turbo
figure it
boomer.
out.
Or
You know?
you're hearing his shit.
Yeah, well, I guess that could be a scenario. Like that's a good point, Reese. That if you don't like, if you've got a perfect voice and the ability to deliver a line, but you can't hear.
But you need that director in the room telling you, go a little bit higher for this line, go a little bit lower.
Well, not even just that, but just like when like you can't calibrate the mic settings on your own. You know, now a big thing here is that we're talking simultaneously about the change that Funimation is making and also what they were doing during the pandemic, right? So nowadays, if you have the situation of the guy mowing his lawn, like they said here, you could just go to your so you could head over to your agent's recording studio when you needed it, because now there's not a pandemic going on anymore, right? So they said,
okay. Let me say this. Then by all this, then what they should do is make multiple options, like you guys were saying. That would kind of.
well,
be
I think ultimately what it should come down to is the fact that, like I said, being able to record remotely effectively that's the footnote on your resume that gets you the extra work. You know, have grade A home studio, can record remotely if needed, blah, blah, like, you know, whatever you
They
put that
already
into your
kind of
good.
They already kind of were doing that before having the hybrid, I guess you could say, to a much lesser extent, because Vic was recording remotely, right, from LA.
Right.
But you know, because obviously he had that little tick on his resume, he was able to do that.
Right. Stan was saying home recordings, unless you're Vic with a pro studio with pro equipment in your own home. Right?
Now, you absolutely like this idea of a pro studio, pro equipment. It is so easy, and I'm not going to say cheap, but relatively speaking, for like this being your career, I say it's cheap. Like you could spend like a bit under $1,000 and have a studio, a room that's reasonably treated.
I mean,
and
the thing
even
is,
that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that was kind of the end of it. It's like, if even that, like, you just have to get enough of the correct kind of foam that can actually get rid of the reverb, and then you just have to have a good enough, like, you know, mic placement and signal to noise ratio. Now, something I will say is that I'm kind of impressed at how some of these voice actors, you would think they'd be in the mode of like, so voice acting isn't something that's very reliable. So I would think that at least some of these people, probably more of the newer people, would be savvy in some of these things or already have their own home setup, because likely you would be recording your own stuff and be sending out your own your portfolios to
it's
things
a modern
online.
It's a modern skill set for sure that people should be expected to have now. You know,
also-
it's like I work with people. I've worked with people before in different various situations who don't know how to use a word processor. Like they've never used Microsoft Word, or they don't know how to draft an email. You know what I mean? And they need help. Like they request help. Can you help me send this email? Or whatever, you know? And so I think we sort of take for granted as you know, like industries progress, how much of that there actually is going on. Real quick, I want to address. So Stan previously, like literally a minute before, as I was saying this, said unionizing the dub actors will guarantee that there will be less jobs for the actors. Good job. And then continued that with Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and AMC Plus now have to justify the money they are spending for shows. So the margins need to be higher for these companies to make money and still pay the license holders, which is sort of what I was saying before about, because of the inflation, you have to have like the profit margins have to be more guaranteed. You can't take risks with something that might be a loss because you know that this other show is going to cover the loss. You know what I mean?
What I wanted to point out earlier is when Putnam brought up the whole, you know, placing the foam and all that kinds of stuff. I mean, that's also another thing to understand that, there is a stereotypical studio, but then trick of the trade, burlap, it's super cheap compared to studio foam and does about the same damn thing, if not better, when set up right. So you could just get a roll of burlap and use that as your sound buffers. So all I'm pointing out is that the cost of setting up the studio is far less than having the space, the appropriate space. It's far less important, well, to worry about than having the space, because the whole thought process of a car is going to come barreling down, or your lawn or someone's lawnmower, to be able to stop noise like that is going to cost a good penny.
Yeah,
But
like that's where you actually have to completely soundproof the walls of the room.
it becomes a serious
It
issue.
becomes very impossible, I would say.
But I mean, I've seen people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on cement rock type things, and still you can hear the mowers outside. But the thing is, though, is like that right there is your main issue. But as far as setting up, I would like to put a price tag of, outside of the PC, I'd say you could probably have a good studio setup for about $400 or $500 USD and be able to make really good quality stuff that could definitely be used in a pro level production. Like,
Well,
you don't
even
need a
for
million.
I
literally
think-
a grand.
Yeah, but I think an issue with it is not so much that that it's not cheap and doable. It's that the person who has to make that call, they don't necessarily they're
money,
stuck at the stage of there's like a barrier to entry where you don't even know what to do. Like you're just completely at a loss for, I don't know how to set this up. And like maybe there's a resource out there that would quickly tell you you can do
YouTube.
it for this much. It's not that expensive. It's easy.
YouTube.
But
But
Why
you're
can't
also
the people
assuming
at Funimation have a guide made.
no, but all of this assumes that they even have the space to do it, right?
True,
Some of these
right.
people are doing it in their closet because they don't have anywhere else to do it.
Closets
Right.
are pretty good for makeshift recording. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I've
just
done
in,
it.
just in terms of the noise dampening of being around the clothes and stuff. Yes, but as Aaron Dismuke had said previously, that the problem with it, of course, is that like a lot of
rustling.
times, yeah, like when we're on the call here, when we're talking, sometimes one of us is getting a lot of background noise, and we hear the background noise in real life, like where we're at, but we don't realize necessarily that it's coming into the microphone.
The mic, yeah.
And so people who are experiencing a slight rustle of the clothes as they're talking, like they're giving a performance which is causing them to move a little bit, and like their head, let's say, is resting up against a coat that's hanging down. So as they turn their head, they kind of barely hear it, but like outside of that, it's picking up on the mic, like because it's right there next to you.
Well,
Okay,
you
I
have to
see where you're
account for
coming
that.
from, but I'd like to ask a question. Who the hell isn't going to listen back to a recording?
No, they're
And-
saying that it wasn't something you could do in that
In the
thing.
moment?
And if you're listening to it, like if you are playing it back and you're hearing, yeah, sounds good, but then the audio engineer, when they finally get it and they're listening to it with high quality micro or headphones on, then they're hearing, oh shit, there's all this like rustling going on.
There's no, there's yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I see where you're
let's put
coming
it this
from.
way. Everything, like all these bumps in the road for them, it's like they can get around them. The point is that this is just way less practical. Like they'll
Also-
get around it sooner or later, but it'll take so much more time and resources to get the
That's
final
fair.
product.
Yeah. So there was a something that got brought up during the Amber Heard trial. Amber claimed that she got cut from Aquaman 2 and had to fight her way to get back on the contract and everything. And Depp's team claimed no, that never happened. And to prove that, they called in the either the president or CEO of Warner Brothers film division, basically the top guy.
The executive.
And he came in and he was like, No, we never released her from her contract because her contract was an option contract. There's literally no incentive for us to release her. We did tell her at one point we weren't going to uh, fulfill our like we weren't going to call her for the option. We weren't going to pull it because her chemistry was bad with Jason Momoa in the first Aquaman, and Amber's team was like, well, she did a chemistry test with Jason Momoa, and she passed that chemistry test. That's why you hired her in the first place. So how could it be that you're telling us now that she has bad chemistry? And he basically said, well, listen, yeah, we have this test, and we thought they had good chemistry in the little test, but when we actually started making the movie, we realized there wasn't good chemistry, and we had to work really hard with movie magic to make it look like they had chemistry in the final product. And if we had got an actor, which they were considering for Aquaman 2 to recast her, that had better chemistry with them, they wouldn't have had to do as much movie magic, as much work. They wouldn't have had to put in as much effort to fake the fact that to fake the chemistry. Yeah. So if an audio engineer might be able to take a audio clip that has some rustling in it or whatever, and post process it to remove the rustling or at least make it so it's not noticeable. But it's a lot more work. Whereas if they just come in, then we can make sure that there are no rustling right away.
You could get rid of the post process. I completely see where you're coming from.
So let's finish this little snippet here real quick. So Jason Scott mentioned to me that one thing Jason Scott mentioned to me is that even some big name pro voice actors were normally able to head over to their agent's recording studio when they needed it. But now being able to remote record almost acts as an additional prerequisite to getting cast, particularly in the case of role reprisals. It might have been worth delaying an episode for longer than usual in order to ensure the needed actors were set up. Sadly, though, in cases like the character Davis in the latest Digimon movie, Brian Donovan was recast due to issues with his home setup. It's also possible that really good voice actors could be excluded from projects simply because they couldn't meet the new higher threshold. Granted, there are definitely some who adjusted, and there are now undoubtedly cases where remote recording can be seen as the more convenient option. I mean, why drive an hour or two down to a studio just to record a few minutes of audio when you can do it from home and save time as well as money? And again, this is regarding how they recorded during COVID when there were reasons for them to not come in. Now, on top of this, I've got these responses to Anime News Network's article. We're going to come back to in a minute. This one, where Sean Chiplock said, actors in Los Angeles are still battling with getting paid as employees. Again, actors in Los Angeles are union for the most part. So a codified law in California for almost a decade now, getting paid as an employee, because studios keep using terminology that's meant for musicians to continue paying actors as 1099 independent contractors. They're violating the labor law. Okay, well, and he replies, quote, so why don't you just tell them to stop? Because we really enjoy what we do, which is why you get taken advantage of, and are still trying to figure out how to successfully convince some of the biggest names in casting/dubbing to stop screwing us over on taxes while there's thousands of actor options who won't ask. All right, so if this is such a big deal, Clifford or Sean Chiplock, here's what you need to do. It's called a class action lawsuit. I'm sure that you've got plenty of other VAs who could come in and put their name to it, so that it's not one person being litigious. It's the group of voice actors, and the more of them that get involved, the more pressure is put onto the companies who are doing things wrong, who will have to go to court to argue that they're not violating the labor law. And at the end of the day, it's not going to come down on anybody in particular, because you've got the entire industry that they rely on effectively behind the class action lawsuit, right?
They'd need to get some big people on that though.
Yeah,
Like,
but I think they
people.
could if
Yeah.
if it was such a big deal. And the thing is, like you said, because we really enjoy what we do, is that yeah, you're a pussy. You're not going to stand up to them because you let them walk over you because you like to record for anime.
Well, that's why I said they'd need big names, because
Yeah.
if they don't get big names, then they're like, how much do we really need you?
Yeah.
Scoop you out. We'll just hire someone else, because there's
Well, that's
like
why I'm
tons of people
suggesting-
that are willing to be like, oh, I'm a fan. I can, and like, is it worth them fighting you for whatever money they're, or rather just, okay, we deal with a couple years of anime where we get new people that aren't maybe as good as the people that we just lost. As long as they keep like the big ticket names, like used to be, like Vic used to be.
Yeah. But think about it.
Then
But think about it from the perspective of, if you did it through a class action lawsuit, it's not like the lawsuit just disappears. They have to fight the lawsuit to prove that they are able to violate the labor law that you're claiming they're violating.
If they're doing something illegal,
Yeah, which is what he's claiming.
then yeah, then they still have to. They'd still have a claim, and they could go after them for that claim, and they would owe them back taxes. But they could still fire all of them,
Right.
and rehire them under new contracts, and
Which is ultimately the goal that they want. So I'm just
move
saying,
everyone to Texas.
I'm just saying that this tweet here from Sean Chiplock is a pity me tweet. It's like,
sure.
I can't do anything about it. It's like, you've got plenty of options. You're just a pussy who's not gonna exercise those options, right? If you actually want to see this change, and not just give me a pity me tweet on Twitter about, like, you got to support us because we're getting taken advantage of. It's like, well, you're letting yourself get taken advantage of. Now, Kaiji Von Tang had this to say: the conversation isn't about LA talent being barred from Texas shows. We'll be fine. But the slow removal of remote recording will be wrecking many new VAs who were able to shine during the last 2 years. We've enjoyed a huge new range of voices. What a shame to stop now, right? So this is the idea that during COVID, when they were doing all the remote simuldubs, they got voice actors we'd never heard before, new people in other states and whatnot, that diversified the content pool, right? Which is something that, again, is, as he said, it's a shame to lose that. And I think, again, that Funimation is moving back to in-person dub recordings, because the people who held the monopoly previously in the Texas-based stuff with Okratron and whatnot, I think that they're a little bit peeved at the fact that they don't get to continue to get the major roles that pay their bills and allow them to stay on top, right? I think there's probably some of that going on. And then we've also got Kara Edwards, who said, quote, so yeah, this is in response to the Anime News Network tweet about the article. A studio I did a ton of non-anime animation work with in New York through the pandemic went back to in-person recording, and I haven't been cast since. I live in Texas. This is normal. Basically, again, the Kara Edwards, the Dragon Ball clique that is close with Sabbath is like, fuck you, Anime News Network. This is normal. Get over it, other voice actors, because she's back in the good graces of getting roles because of her proximity to Sabbath. Is how I'm reading that. And look at good old Ron Toye. Absolutely. It's really sad that this news outlet has put out a few articles that seem like they are fishing for outrage or wanting some breaking hot take. Also, I get wanting the union for dubs, but they are not considering how that could impact actors who do more than just anime here in Texas. I don't do a good Ron Toye voice. Sorry about that. Anyway, so back to the actual article here. I forgot where I left off. Okay. So the 2-hour discussion and audience Q&A highlighted the benefits SAG offers to its members, which is minimum pay, health insurance, a pension, etc., while also exposing lingering questions from non-union actors about both the impact greater union density will have over on the industry and the path to achieving it. Miller described the anime dubbing industry as being in a, quote, once-in-a-generation industry-wide moment of flux. Citing COVID, the rise of remote recording, and the Crunchyroll and Funimation merger, they acknowledged that it's a scary time for voice actors who often struggled to find consistent work even before the pandemic. But according to Miller, the newly merged Crunchyroll represents a choke point of power. Crunchyroll is committed to producing many of its shows in-house rather than farming out work to external studios. So signing this one company to a union contract, as SAG was able to do with Netflix, would instantly transform hundreds of shows from non-union to union. Crunchyroll's shift toward in-person recording complicates those ambitions. After dozens of dubs produced remotely, many using talent from around the country, this season Crunchyroll confirmed that they have moved back to bringing Texas-based talent into the studio. Anime News Network confirmed with multiple industry sources familiar with Crunchyroll's dubbing procedure that the company is not only bringing Texas talent in-house, but is focusing on casting Texas-based talent in its dubs. The Crunchyroll representative did not confirm that the company had told ADR directors to focus only on hiring Texas-based actors or was actively avoiding hiring talent outside of Texas. But when you've got your Crunchyroll ADR directors who are working at Okratron, it just seems kind of obvious that they are sticking with their clique. So an Anime News Network analysis of recent castings of May 10th, as of May 10th, reveals the proportion of Crunchyroll roles going to talent based outside of Texas in the spring 2022 season dropped to less than half that of winter 2022. This is partially explained by the heavier use of Texas-based ADR directors compared to last season. Bless you. But even shows directed outside of Texas had significantly fewer remote castings than in the winter. In public Twitter threads and private conversations, actors complained of roles being recast from remote actors to Texas-based ones, with directors in some cases reportedly told not to cast outside of Texas. Anime News Network did not find anyone willing to go on the record with specific examples, and many performers feared retaliation for speaking out. Notably, Texas is a right-to-work state, meaning that the state laws curtailing unions will likely make organizing actors to demand contracts much more difficult. Why the shift all of a sudden? According to Crunchyroll, they've reopened and expanded, and this is just a part of that process. The company also recently upgraded their studio space and likely wants to get use out of their investment. In the roundtable, Miller also acknowledged the additional cost of remote recording, most notably the audio engineering work to normalize sound quality between different recording spaces. Whatever the reasons, the new approach has hit actors outside of Texas hard, and many complained that they were never officially notified of the change in policy. In a Twitter thread, Riza May highlighted the importance of remote recording for autoimmune disabled actors, calling the abrupt return to in-person recording inhumane. May explained in an email to Anime News Network that Texas-based actors who are immunocompromised, for Texas-based actors who are immunocompromised, it is still dangerous for them to come in person for studio recording. Quote, it is inhumane for them to demand that Texas-based actors with autoimmune disabilities still come to the studio to work. This is not specific to just talent, but for production as well, May wrote. According to Miller, SAG encourages remote recording, but likely wouldn't be able to mandate it even if Crunchyroll did go union. At the very least, it can mandate HEPA filters, regular cleaning, masking, and other COVID-19 safety protocols. I can't wait until they do that. And the lines delivered in every anime are gonna sound like this because they all have fucking masks.
Okay,
on
I've got a call.
studio.
I'm gonna call this out. I
I-
think our whole discussion earlier was delightful about home versus in-house versus what might be good or bad. I think what really needs to just happen is Ogretron needs to get its fucking hands out of everything that Funimation does and stop. It just seems like maybe I'm wrong, and I would love for anyone to correct me and say I'm wrong because I'd like to not feel this way. But it seems like Ogretron, if it's Funimation, one of their main things, and all Funimation's like main casting shit. Like it seems like anytime they do something, we get situations like this. Where
It'd be
hey, we're
funny,
going to
though.
go with this cast, or we're going to prioritize this.
I don't think this is a particular problem because of Okatron.
Yeah, but it'd be funny to see if they did decide to stop contracting with Okratron, if they just switched over to Sound Cadence.
And see what
Oh, no.
happens with the
The HEPA filter. I don't think they're talking about HEPA filter in their face. I think they're just talking about it.
They're just talking about
using it as
purifying the
a-
air from
Yeah.
the
Like in the
spring
air
wind.
system.
I was
The air-
referring to the masking.
The problem is with all of that.
Oh,
that
masking.
none of that is going to stop what they're trying to say it's going to stop, because as AC and I agree pointed out, I believe it was last podcast, everyone's gonna get it, and eventually we're just going to get to where we have a resistance to it. But all this crap about all this social paranoia is just slowing it down and making people paranoid.
Right.
I think you've all gotten it except me, right?
I have gotten it twice.
AC got it, right?
I never got tested.
Oh. I
don't
think
know.
Reese said he got it. I definitely have not gotten it. Unless I
Sorry,
got it before
To be
literally
fair- to be
everyone.
fair,
Asymptomatic.
There's a
Reese,
chance you had it.
We're trying to
you have
find
no
out
symptoms.
how many of us have AIDS.
Has
Haha.
AIDS?
Yeah, do you have AIDS?
Do you have airborne AIDS?
No, I don't have airborne AIDS.
Have
You
you
haven't
had
got
it,
COVID?
No. Haven't
Oh,
got
okay.
jabbed either.
Well, Random 11's debunked. Fake news.
I thought
Correlation does
there
not
was a
Reese.
I thought there was a
Wasn't-
time where you said you were really sick and I thought you had COVID.
No, I was really sick. Yeah, like what? First part of May or whatever. That had
I
nothing
mean,
to
you
do
were
with-
in the hospital recently.
Yeah. That had nothing to do with COVID.
Okay.
But yeah,
So me
I-
me and
I
Reese
don't-
are
I don't.
me
have
and Reese are
COVID.
clean so far.
It's
I
been
think
first time.
the only people who are who we can confirm had it were Foodnum and Lance. Did
It's amazing.
Greenline have it?
Greenline. said he got
Greenline's not
shot.
here right now, but
Anyway,
If I remember correctly, I might be wrong.
Anyway, we'll just continue from here and say that at the very least, it can mandate HEPA filters, regular cleaning, masking, and other COVID-19 safety protocols in the studio. Without the union, Crunchyroll can not only require in-person recording, but also require that actors consent to whatever safety rules or lack thereof they have in place. The fate of international... It's funny, like, it's almost like monopolies are a bad thing.
Yeah, no shit.
The fate of international actors is closely tied to remote recording, which was a hot topic in the Coda Q&A session. SAG representatives assured the audience that they don't make casting decisions, and thus the union wouldn't stop any client from hiring international talent. Maggie Russell Brown, National Director of Organizing for SAG, put it bluntly, quote, "Employees have the right to hire and make decisions about their businesses. Workers have the right to either accept that or not. When those workers collectively refuse to accept non-union work, they give SAG the power to get the company on board and negotiate a contract. That's where that's where the organizing piece comes in. God damn it. That's where the organizing piece comes in," she said. One recent example, actor Reba Burr secured an increased rate for the Ascendance of a Bookworm Season 3 cast as a condition of her returning to play Mine. "I wasn't willing to accept the same old rock-bottom rate I had received in the past," she tweeted. Quote, "There's power in numbers," said Stephanie Shea. What's up?
I just on my phone scrolling to like petition to replace Amber Heard and Aquaman 2 with Bruce Campbell, which is
Yeah.
reaches 2 million. I'm like, oh, Jesus.
Isn't that the one where he like was retweeting it saying "Sign me up" or "Send me a script"?
Yeah. There's power in numbers, said Stephanie Shea, chiming in from the audience at the session. The more productions that sign a union contract, the more union work is available. The inverse is also true, though, and that catch-22 left some audience members uncertain about whether they'd be able to pick up enough work if they joined the union. But as Miller pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, the Netflix contract flipped everything under their umbrella, extending SAG benefits to many more actors. Quote, "I'm getting paid 30% more than I was last year," they said. If SAG and Coda can overcome new policies around remote recording to do the same at Crunchyroll, it could fundamentally change the way anime dubbing work is done. And again, it operates from the perspective that companies are not paying you more because they just don't want to, right? That it doesn't have anything to do with budgets, the bottom line, the ability to expand and continue to provide future
Management
work.
abusing their
I have a
roles and causing
question.
problems.
Yeah, and the thing is that without unions, if you actually have talent, right, in a meritocracy, you don't need the collectivism because you can negotiate the rate based on the fact that companies know that when they hire Vic, they make money. You know, those sort of things.
Oh.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is everyone here aware of the term called union dues?
Union
Yes.
dues? Yeah, I've heard of them.
Having to pay, effectively a
Be a
union
part,
is
yeah.
a sort of mafia, right? You
Oh,
pay
you
for
mean
the
like the thing
protection
where you have to
racket.
pay into it?
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
pay for it, and then they get to dictate in a lot of union cases, they get to dictate what type of work you can take. They force you to not be able to take other work or else you get penalized. And effectively they tell you, no, you want to work on this project, but they can only afford to pay you $10 an hour. No, they have to pay you triple that because you're union. I don't care that they're adapting a story that your grandfather wrote. You can't voice in it because it's union. Right, you're a union.
Which is why we never see union actors in Funimation dubs most of the time.
Right. Musement says union dues sound like a scam. Well, yeah. See, because the point of unionizing is that it is a collectivist attempt to bargain for people who aren't talented or profitable enough to bargain on their own. Basically, just to use Vic as an example, somebody like Vic, or let's use somebody else like Troy Baker, for example, might have a big enough draw and talent or a voice that people love. Stephen J. Bloom might be another good example. Somebody where people will watch a show simply because you cast Stephen J. Bloom and they love his voice, for example. Right. So a person like that can negotiate their contracts. They can do okay by themselves because they have that talent and they bring people to your product. But for 80% of your cast, they aren't talented enough to get a raise, right? They don't effectively deserve to be paid as much as a Vic or a Stephen J. Bloom or whoever, right? So they have to band together in order to force. Yes, it is a strong arming technique through collectivist ideology.
I would like to point out that in some cases, it can be helpful, but in a lot of cases, it is hurtful because companies lose the ability to, screen and set up, but then you also have the problem of companies, again, like Funimation, who would, abuse, people not standing up to them.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why people are incredibly worried, will I have a job?
So unions definitely can do good if you happen to be in alignment with the collective goal of more pay or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is,
except that dues could be the equal amount of whatever more you get paid.
I mean, generally they wouldn't do that because the people that are.
Well, no,
what's to stop them? What's to stop them?
Hold on.
Okay, one, Reese, I understand where you're coming from, and two, unions wouldn't last very long if they did do that. I've never heard of someone. I've never heard of someone who had to pay more than they made in. They would definitely not want to
No,
be a
no,
part
more
of that
than
union.
more than the surplus income
Well,
than
also,
if they worked at, say, Funimation
fair.
Yes. Okay.
by working at Bang Zoom.
So if you have a union that says, okay, we want a $2 raise, uh, and that equates to you getting $5,000 more a year or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, our yearly due is $5,000. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense. But the people who are in the union, that are like running the union, know what they can get away with. It's politics, right? Because they're elected and everything like that too. So the person, the chair of the union, whatever it's called, I forget what it's called, but the person running the union will know what they can get away with, and if they do something that's not politically like
Kosher.
kosher within the union, he'll get booted. Someone else will come in. So there is a possibility that oh well, our raises got we got a $5,000 raise this year, but our union due is $5,000. That's possible. It would make sense if they cared about, well, you also got better hours, and you had to work less hours, or
Stopping you from
you got
taking this, from
medical
having a hobby,
insurance.
or doing your taxes appropriately and getting your refund and all that kinds of stuff. So there's all I'm trying to say is that argument doesn't hold a lot of water, since I agree with Random 11 in the fact that yes, you need to get rid of the person that would be doing that to you.
Unions can do good things. They can do bad things if you're not aligned with the union, was my point. I was trying to get that earlier. So if you are the person who is excelling, who says, well, no, I can work X number of hours. I want to get paid for those extra hours that I'm working, because I don't care. I love voicing X number of roles, whatever. The union's going to come in and say, well, no, you can't work that extra hours.
Right.
Because the company doesn't want to pay that, and we don't want to support you in that thing. So now it's like, oh fuck, now the union is limiting where I can work, and you can't do shit about it.
The thing,
My friend,
go ahead.
my friend worked for Yellow Pages. Well, a friend that he used to be my friend in high school. Anyway, he worked for Yellow Pages.
guy
I
you
met
know.
Yeah. He used to work for Yellow Pages. He was in a union, and he wanted to work there. It was his job, and the union decided to make a deal with the company to basically get rid of his entire department. I was like, okay, well, what can you do about it? You can't do shit about it. So because he was in the minority, right?
Mhm.
So he
Also,
he literally got laid off because of his union.
Also, another argument. I mean, it's again, this is the whole potato versus potato argument of there's good and bad, because a lot of the union workers that I've known in the years were truckers, and it's not a job, not being discriminative or trying to insult people, but it's not a job that you have to have like the highest IQ or a very skill set that's like, oh hey, AC's been doing video editing and all this picture stuff for years, and he has all these talents. No, you know how to drive appropriately, and the laws in that regards. I mean, there's the barrier to entry is low, and they would not be able to get jobs and stuff if it was not for their union set up, because it didn't matter what job they took. It wasn't that kind of work. It was, I need a job, I need to get paid, my bills are due. So that's why I'm totally agreeing with the idea of it's a double-edged sword. It depends on the situation, but I've seen it help a lot of people more than I've seen, personally. I've seen it help people more than I've seen it hurt them, but not saying that people don't get screwed over by being in unions, because that totally happens.
All right.
Did I go off the rails there?
No, you're sorry. I'm working
Okay,
on
I
some
was just
merch.
double checking. I was just like,
And sorry, did I get out the point that the union, there is a case sometimes when the union may say, okay, your raise is $5,000, your dues are $5,000, but here you get medical insurance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the
Very-
benefit we're giving you. Even though for the money wise, you're
Read
not
the
really
fine print,
gaining
guys.
anything.
Know what you're joining. That's all we really can do.
Yeah, and it's kind of like in the way I look at it is like in YouTube they had multi-channel networks, right? And so a lot of people joined MCNs thinking that they would be good for you, but unless they're selling their own ads, all you're getting is the same deal you had with Google, but they're taking a cut of your earnings.
Mhm.
You know,
I forgot
And-
about that.
and occasionally, they might have, by letting them have a cut of your earnings, you got guaranteed into them fighting on your behalf against a copyright claim or something. But
A lot of good that's going to
most
do
of
against
them,
Google.
well, most of them are predatory, and sometimes, the multi-channel network did have something to offer, like they had limited licenses to songs or whatever. So if you got claimed on something, they could get it waived because you were a part of their group. But if you left the group, the claim came back, stuff like that, which is of course how they maneuver their way into getting a cut of your revenue. But the point is that there were a lot of them where they weren't offering you anything. It was just a sales pitch to trick you into giving them access to your revenue.
It's like that. It's like when you go to GameStop, like, would you like this, $3 or whatever replacement thing on a disc that'll probably never get scratched, and I've only known of one person to return it. It's just the psychological play to keep you. It's playing on paranoia is what it is. Like in a lot in that regards there.
Right. So Stan was saying, if you don't want to negotiate your own pay, then by all means join the union. But good luck getting work to help pay those dues that you can't get out of. Yeah, and here's the thing about SAG. The SAG Screen Actors Guild, I believe, is what allows an actor to get paid residuals, like royalties over time, right? And those are nice, but the cost of making movies has gone up so much that hiring union actors, like the A-list celebrities, becomes impossible for somebody making a more low-budget film.
I just still want to say that I love how my thought process when I hear you say the cost of making movies, and I think Hollywood films, I'm thinking, man, they're not worth half of what they spend on them.
Well, and part of that is because of the unionizing.
The other thing is companies will, like, it just takes them a little bit of time maybe, but they eventually get wise to the idea of what happens, and they get their lawyers involved. So now you have companies that will say, like, okay, well, yeah, you can have residuals if we make X number above our costs, whatever, right? And then then they set up like different companies, like this is the hiring company LLC, and this is the production company LLC, and then so they make it so that contracts with the hiring company, and then they shift the money around so that the hiring company is the one that needs to be in the profit, and so they pay everyone else first, and then they're like, oh, well, we've basically given away all the money, so even though this movie made tons of money, it's already spoken for, and so for residuals you actually get nothing. And it's like, oh, if anyone wants to Google it, this is obviously what I've heard from, I think Barnes has talked about it. Mm-hmm. Robert Barnes. It's called Hollywood Accounting. If you Google that, and that's basically
that
what
rings a bell.
explained.
But I don't want to look into it again.
Well, I think the point effectively is that there are consequences to unionizing the dubbing industry, and
agreed.
Reba Barr, for example, getting weaponizing her Twitter followers in order to get raises on all of her projects, which is good for her, but it makes the companies that are hiring these union actors more wary.
I'd like to make one last point on this situation here. Anytime one person does significantly better, someone else has to do less. That's how the world works. And in this situation, when she makes that much more money, they've got to go, hey, our budget was X. So
Well-
now we have to figure out where the rest of our funds are going to come
As a caveat, when to take what you said and change it a little bit, when somebody does better without actually increasing the productivity or
Thank
the
you.
output,
Thank you.
yeah, that somebody else is taking less, which is to say that you know, you have one of the people you already have on call playing two different characters rather than having an extra person. You know, it might be something like that to just kind of reconsolidate the budget. But in the typical sense of the word, when people are actually talented enough to negotiate their own contracts and whatnot, where they can actually confidently request more pay and expect to get it, in those situations, you're bringing more to the table by being on the project. Like by hiring you, the project makes more money, and therefore the slice of pie is bigger, and there's more going around.
Yeah,
So
there's definitely a something to say about, like, okay, I've got so many Twitter followers, they're gonna help me get a raise, and it's like, okay, well, fine, we'll give you a raise, but we're expecting these Twitter followers to actually pay for this anime, and thus meaning we'll have higher sales, and then fine, and we'll grant you that this will happen, so we're gonna pay you up front now higher, well, fine. But if they don't see higher sales because of your massive Twitter following, then the next time they go to hire someone, they'll be like, well, why would we hire her? She's just gonna have her Twitter people yell at us until we pay her more. So
yeah,
I'm not gonna hire her.
I think
Unless it's backed up with higher sales in the end of the day,
Right.
it's gonna
and
hurt
I think
her.
it'll be interesting to see, because she got, you know, her move got the whole cast to get a higher contract, right? They got, everybody effectively got raises, but it'll be interesting to see down the line how that affects their employability continuing at those companies, because you might actually find out that they basically stopped casting her in new projects because she's effectively a troublemaker. It's the same reason that Amazon has algorithms that they use to find out which employees are most likely to start unions and to actually separate those employees in the break room. Like, they have all these strategies in order to try to stop people from unionizing at Amazon. In fact, when I worked at Amazon for a brief stint that one year, we watched an anti-union PSA warning us of the dangers of unionizing, right? Because at the end of the day, what unionizing does is it costs the company way more for less. Like, they pay you, like they still have the same amount of profit going around, but now they've got to pay fewer people more money, so they have to work harder and restructure everything and automate tasks with machines and things.
Also, I have another
Because
point when you get
yeah, so it just, at the end of the day, it ends up hurting businesses to the point where they literally write code to try to determine who's most likely to become a union leader, and sometimes fire them before you have a chance to start the union, you know, and all these things.
I hate to go back on my word with the whole one last comment, but you made me realize something, a complaint that I've had for a minute now, and I've thought about this. Why unionizing the anime industry, the dubbing industry, is a bad idea. People can't control sometimes what the show's going to be like. And if the show is ass, and let's say you did, get the best.
If the show is ass, why did we pay so much for these actors?
Exactly. So it's like this whole, it's another reason why definitely don't need unionizing to force, definitely don't need it to force higher wages onto a shit show, because no one's going to give a damn or want to buy it. So at the end of the day, there's a support why it's a bad idea.